honest to God, I've ever met. And I know that you've had the same experience if you've met them. I've never met Bob, but I know he's Canadian, so it goes without saying, he too is a really nice person. If you've ever met a Canadian and had a bad experience, I'm telling you, it's your fault. Canadian people are better people. That is just a fact. So, we are going to be joined right now by somebody who everyone across the board, KISS fans and members of the KISS Army will always say, you know who's the nicest guy that you can meet in KISS? It's Bruce Kulick. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for the great Bruce Kulick, everybody. They're saying Bruce. Bruce. Yeah, absolutely. And a legend in the wrestling world. And I'm telling you, you cannot believe what a fan of pop culture this guy is. You could talk to this guy for hours about pop culture, and he'll scare you a little bit because he's much bigger than you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chris Jericho! And one more time, you'll see him on the big screen. Wave and say hello to the great Bob Ezrin, ladies and gentlemen. Bob Ezrin, give a wave to the crowd here. Bob, before we get started, if I could just, on a personal note, you've worked with Pink Floyd. How angry is Roger Waters?
Well, he's as angry as he seems to anybody who pays attention right now, and I try not to anymore because I find it rather embarrassing. But he's an angry old man.
He is. I did a comedy show in Auckland, New Zealand, and Roger.
Funny Bones?
It was Funny Bones in Auckland, New Zealand. And Roger, through his production manager, wanted to shut down the comedy show and make it a private event for Roger, his band, and his crew. And in my mind, I thought, oh my God, I'm about to become friends with Roger Waters. Roger Waters hated me so much during my stand-up act that he got up and walked out of his own party and left everybody behind. He hated me that much. So that was a personal question I wanted to ask you, Bob. But obviously, we are here because of KISS. Chris, how has your weekend been so far?
First of all, thank you guys for coming this morning so early. A really great time this whole weekend has been. A great celebration of rock and roll, of good times. And Bob, I'm a fellow Canadian. Much respect to you. Some of the greatest records of all time produced by Bob Ezrin. Here with the amazing Bruce Kulick from the greatest era of KISS. Our whole band Quarantine plays nothing but his songs. Let's hear it for Bruce. Bruce Kulick, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
I got emotional last night. I had no idea you were going to walk out on stage. And when I heard Paul call your name, I went, shut up.
Yeah, no, it was really exciting. I got a call from Gene. Of course, he was requesting pancakes for my lovely wife, Lisa, okay, to bring them, you know. But he said, like, you're going to come up on the last two songs, contact Tommy, and, you know, go over some of the arrangements, figure out what you're going to do. And there I was. It was really magical, and I know all of you were hoping for something like that to happen sometime. And I think last night was a really appropriate time for that.
There's so much love for KISS, and I feel like with Ace's passing, there's this feeling of like, my God, we're all getting older. We love our heroes, and we want to see these moments happening. And when you walked out, did he really ask you for pancakes? Gene called asking for pancakes.
Well, my wife is legendary with him, right? He does. He's got a sweet tooth, you know. He can't help it.
Hi, Bruce. It's Gene Simmons from KISS.
I'm good.
How can I help you? I'll have 3 pancakes, 2 orders of fries.
Craig, can I ask Bob a quick question?
Absolutely.
Bob, Craig just mentioned Ace Frehley. What was it like working with Ace on Destroyer and then working with him on The Elder?
You know, Ace Ace was a party all the time, but also just an amazing guitar player and a character. We laughed. Ace had the greatest sense of humor and the best laugh in history. I mean, you know, if you were in a room with him and he started talking and telling jokes and started laughing, you would be on the floor, guaranteed. There was no way to avoid it. So there was a lot of laughter. There were some times where we butted heads, as has been memorialized often. He wasn't really a fan of The Elder. He didn't really want to do that record, and the rest of us did. To his credit, he you know, pulled up his big boy pants and gave some great performances on the album. And in hindsight, I have to say he was probably right and we were wrong, but you know, that you just have to do your best with the ideas that you have and with the time that you're in. Anyway, yes, and his passing is really, really tragic. It knocked me back in my chair when I heard about it, because it does feel very much like the end of that era.
Agreed. It's when you're working, I know as a comedian, I'll work with people on projects and sometimes you think, oh man, when people hear this, they're gonna flip out and you don't get anything. And then there's sometimes you put things out and you go, this is whatever, and people go, that was amazing. Have you had experiences like that, Bob, where you're working on a project and you just think, I don't know how this is gonna get received, and it surprises you? And then are there moments on the other side of that where you think, oh, this is gonna be huge, and it's not?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the majority of the work that anybody who does what I do for a living will do, the majority of it, you think it's great, it goes out into the world, and it's crickets. But you know, if you're lucky, excuse me, as I've been a few times, you put something out there that you think is great, and the rest of the world agrees with you, and that's just the best feeling in the world.
Was it surprising to you that in this day and age, and I'm sure all of us feel this, The Elder was so maligned when it first came out, but now in 2025, people really love that record. It is such a it's such a strange, unique, weird record, but when you figure out the tone of what it is, it's actually really good. Paul hates it to this day, but I tell you, you're wrong. Stop it. It's a good record, man. What did you think when you were making it, and how do you feel now, 50, 40 years later, that people really do enjoy it and appreciate it?
You know, I hadn't heard it myself for decades, and then they were doing a book about it, and they came up to my place, and I said, look, I'll do an interview, but you have to bring the music because I don't even have it anymore. And they came up and started playing the record for me, and I was sitting there just as a punter, listening and thinking, wow, listen to that, that's really great. There are some amazing moments on the record. But I did come away feeling, I have to say honestly, that we put Paul in a very difficult position because he was basically playing an almost operatic role. This is before the Phantom. Maybe after the Phantom that would have made sense, but before the Phantom it was completely foreign to him. And he was playing this very sort of, musical theater role, which was not comfortable for him. He did a fantastic job at it, but I think that at the end of the day, he didn't feel fulfilled like he would have if we'd done a regular rock record. All of that being said, everything you do along the way is valuable in some way or another, even if it's just to teach you a lesson. But this album, there's some really great performances by some amazing people, several of whom are no longer with us. So for me, it's a monument, that album, to the time and to those people at that time.
It's crazy, I was too young to see KISS in their original heyday. My first KISS concert blew me away, and it was non-makeup with Bruce on guitar. It was the Animalized tour, and I had the T-shirt, if it's too loud, you're too old, and Queensryche opened for you guys. The amount of love that you feel from being part of the organization, I feel like there was a new wave. I was part of the new wave of fans that came in to the non-makeup era. Did you feel like there was a whole new era of fans coming in, Bruce?
Absolutely, and obviously trying to compete once the reunion tour started and makeup was again glorified and shown in that such a romantic way. You know, there it is, they're back after 10 years, and then, you know, we know that Ace and Peter, they had their differences, so now, you know, it's Tommy and Eric, and KISS carried on. And I mean, in the beginning, I felt very left behind. I didn't see much value in my years, in what I did. I couldn't listen to any of it, but that changed pretty quickly when, especially the more I traveled internationally, and people were just like, I love you, you're the first KISS guitar player, which is, of course, in history, a bit absurd, because I wouldn't have had my gig without Ace Frehley and the magic of the original four. But I'm so proud of the fact that that era has survived. It has kind of almost been much more embraced. You know, I love my friend Chris Jericho for celebrating those songs, of course. But at my meet and greet yesterday, right? Good luck for that, the quarantine. The meet and greet yesterday, you were my first guitarist. You know, you know what I mean? I keep getting stuff like that. And I gotta say something that connects to Bob very well, okay? I knew Bob's career, of course. I was always a huge fan. My brother Bob, who, by the way, I'm sure loves this.
Great guy.
You know, he worked with Alice Cooper. You know, he toured with Alice, and then, you know, every band, especially when you have a lot of albums, you progress. You're just talking about the elevator, you know, left turn, right, for KISS. Well, every artist that has that kind of a catalog is going to do that. So now, even in my years, yeah, my years were pretty defined by, we were doing hair metal, rock and roll, but good stuff. It's still going, Gene driving the bus, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, we realized we gotta do a great record. Maybe Bob Ezrin could be involved. And then I'm hearing this, Bob, well, you know, he did Destroyer, and he also did The Elder. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe that's not a great, I'm like, Bob, I want Ezra, you know what I mean? And of course we chose working with Bob. It was a magical experience for me, Revenge. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it.
One of my favorite songs of all time, let alone my favorite KISS song, but Unholy. Oh my, I remember hearing that. I don't know what age I was when that came out. I was in my late teens and I went, holy shit, what are they so mad about? Like, that was so cool. And
Gene really dialed it in. I mean, maybe you had a good talk with him, Bob, I don't know. I mean, you know, I know Gene gets criticized a lot during my era. He was very distracted because I don't know anyone that works harder than Gene Simmons. He doesn't believe in a holiday or vacation. Why would you do that? Why would you, you know, why do you want to go to Hawaii? What are you doing? You know what I mean? To him, it's all work and business, and it fuels his being, you know. But certainly, you know, all of a sudden the songs from Gene were powerful, almost more powerful than anything. Usually the Paul has the bigger songs. And I know Paul wasn't always in love with that, but that's the way you have the best record you can have. You know, you compete, but everybody comes to the table. Bob worked me so hard, and I would take anything from him. I remember one time you pulled a joke on me. You put the tape recorder out of sync. He said, "What do you think? You know, I'm playing, but it's not in time anymore. It's just." And I'm looking at Bob. Going, did I play? What? Right? And then he'll do stuff with the equipment, which is clearly stuff that he learned through all his years. Just like the Beatles had incredible engineer produced, you know, people were working with them, and they pushed the envelope. All of a sudden he's going, "I want you to double the part, but we're going to go with this compressor." And I said, "It sounds like shit. What are you doing?" Trust me. And then he plays back the 2 tracks. I'm like, oh my God, that is amazing. So I just learned so much from that man. I mean, Gene and Paul were great, you know, mentors for everything in the music business and music in general. But to work with such a talented producer, I'm so excited you're here virtually. Okay, this is wonderful.
I want to connect this to Chris too, because what Chris has been doing for the last few years has been magical. But on that topic of that Revenge album, Bob, did you have a conversation with Gene? Did you give him a titty twister? How did you dial him in?
No, I didn't really have to light a fire under him. I think the fire was there. Everybody was looking to do something Really important. Makeup was off. You know, they wanted to set the stage for a new era for the band. And so everybody brought their best game, and it was a fun record to make, actually. It wasn't easy, but you know, nothing really great is easy. But it was fun. I don't think there were any real, you know, fights in the control room or any of that sort of stuff going on during the making of this thing. And Bruce, by the way, you all know it already, but Bruce is like a savant. You know, there isn't anything that you can ask for on a guitar that you can't do. And so having him there, you know, was such a luxury for me, because I would have 1,000 ideas, and here was a guy who could actually realize them. And yeah, it was great. I enjoyed it. I thought, I really did think Gene came to the table that time in a big way. He was energized during that period. So, not me, he did it.
Well, there is an incredible testament to Bruce's years with KISS, and that's with Chris Jericho's band, Quarantine. Holy shit. When that started, I was like, what a cool idea. And everything they put out, am I crazy for thinking that everything just keeps getting bigger and bigger with everything that you put out?
Well, what happened with Quarantine is we started it during the lockdown. Nothing was going on, nobody knew what we were doing. So we just started, let's just record some obscure 80s KISS non-makeup songs with a couple friends of mine. And at the time, nobody was releasing new music to the radio. So I said, well, let's put it out to the radio people and see. We did No 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 was our first song, and it got to like number 21 on rock radio. And I was like, this is insane. It's a super obscure song, the Crazy Nights record, but it's a great song.
Yes.
And there's a huge cachet of material. Bob is shaking his nodding his head from that era. So then we released another, and here we are 5 years later, where we've had 4 top 20 hits, 1 top 10 hit. Our video we just did for Unholy did 1 million views in 1 week. And whether you know these songs like we do, it's great to hear them on a new platform. A lot of people haven't heard the songs, and they go, these songs are amazing, this is great. It's still, in my opinion, the greatest era of KISS ever. Ever. I don't care what anyone says, and I appreciate 70s and I love 90s KISS. 80s KISS is so good and so underrated. So we're really honored to be able to fly the flag of all these great songs. And they're fun, that's the best part. It's fun to play, to perform. We can wear glittery sequin spandex pants and long clothes that are yellow and green and blue. I mean, that's rock and roll. And get people to do chants of do it! I mean, fuck, how fun is that, right?
I mean, Chris is such a showman, right? We all know his wrestling career, which is also incredible show business, and I'm very petrified when he puts me in the front row when they're wrestling. Okay, we did that once, okay? But my, family loves, everything to do with wrestling. I learned so much. But and I have to tell the story about when Chris, and I've known Chris a long time, and I knew he was from Winnipeg. I was probably your first guitarist you saw. He was
Animalized tour, March 9th, 1985.
There you
His
go.
Animalized tour.
And I can move to Winnipeg. I know I got a lot of fans there. I was the beginning of KISS for them. But it was funny when he told me about No 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 and he shared with me. I loved it. I loved his band. He had some amazing players that could really do that energy and stuff that I obviously have a harder time now being older, But we kept in touch about it. Then all of a sudden he actually asked me to do, my next song is going to be a Paul song. It's going to be Heart of Chrome, where you play lead guitar. Now it's the lockdown. I'm like, I would love to. That would be amazing. And you pushed me to figure out how to actually record in my home. Which a lot of people do now, by the way, because digital.
At the time, a lot of people did it.
Right. And then I figured it out. A cabinet in my laundry room, a fancy microphone on it, and I'm recording, and it sounded great. I was able to imitate it. A lot of it, is how you play it. Okay.
You nailed it.
And I nailed it, and I loved it. And then I remember us having this conversation. Oh, you're releasing it? Is my name on it? And Anyway, yeah, Quarantine features, Jericho, featuring Bruce Kulick. It was very nice of you. I appreciate that. I was so excited, just sitting home, nobody could do anything, But, and I've been so supportive of his guys. I'm tight with all of his band. And obviously, the love fest that he shares about my era is very special to me. And some of my friends joke, oh, did you see the Bruce Kulick tribute band? Quarantine.
By the way,
Even when you do Animalize, you're doing a live concert.
That's right.
You know what I mean? It's not
That's right.
the Animalize album, it's the live
right.
show. Okay.
Yeah, we do some makeup songs, but we do them really fast, the way that Kiss did on the Analyze tour.
had that famous Animalized show that would play on MTV all
The best
time.
one.
And
The greatest gigs of all time.
from Detroit. We want to talk to you, by the way. I don't know if we have a production person, but there is supposed to be somebody with a microphone in the audience. And what I'm thinking is, if you have questions, maybe we can get to the aisles. And is there somebody here in production that can bring a microphone up to the front of house? We'll figure that out, but we have somebody who wants to ask a question here. Until we get a microphone here, are you guys okay with me starting with questions from the audience? What is your name and where are you from?
Stephanie from Sydney, Australia.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, when the reunion happened, Carnival of Souls got shelved, and at the time you probably thought it was never going to get released. I'm just wondering how you felt about that album and how you feel about the fact that it was put to the side when the reunion happened.
So Carnival of Souls. You know, Bob, you actually started that record. I don't know how it happened that all of a sudden we cut the tracks that were going to be I Walk Alone, the one song I sang, which was the last track on the record, ironically enough. Even though Gene and I rearranged some of it, but we recorded it to get it started. And I'm so sorry that you couldn't continue on that, because we did go a little more towards what was considered grunge. We started, and Gene was very attracted to that. I used to describe it as like, well, it's going to be a darker, meaner, revenge album, okay? And that meant, a guy that worked with Alice in Chains and stuff. And I was going through a lot of stuff in my personal life at the time that I just kept writing songs and riffs, and they were usually they were very dark and kind of wild. Paul very uncomfortable with the vibe, but they weren't sure what to do next. Then meanwhile, of course, if you're not aware, we already, filmed MTV Unplugged, which also had a bit of a clause that people didn't know there'll be a reunion, a real reunion tour if Ace and Peter come out, which in the history, obviously very important and obviously changed the course of my era. So that record I really gave my heart and soul into, even though it was dark and everything, and then it had to be shelved for a while. The mixes that came out were all weird, it was a tough time for me. Because first of all, they go off to this huge, they're selling out stadiums and stuff, and I'm just like, okay, they still paid me because they kind of knew, well, what happens if Ace and Peter just quit 1 month in? Right. You know what I mean? Kiss still exists with Eric Singer and myself. So it was an awkward time. It was real hard for me, but I learned, that my talent will get me through this if I stay positive. Eventually, the record came out, and they did a little press for it. Jungle, the first single, right, came out, which was one of my co-writes. But it's a strange record. You either love it or hate it. We know, like, the elder Paul doesn't really like it. My biggest regret was that Bob didn't hang in there and do a darker, uglier album for us, But I'm still proud of it in many ways. And it's just another one of those interesting, facets of what is KISS and the KISS catalog.
Bruce, was it communicated to you during that reunion that should Ace step out, that you would step in?
No, but it was the only, I think it was if the whole thing self-imploded.
Okay, then go
Not
back.
so much, we'll pop you in. And by the time Ace wasn't happy, and they were seeing that things were looking iffy, okay? I remember hearing, and I'm thinking, would I, become the spaceman? This is weird. What if they asked me, what would I do? And in the end, it was much easier and the right path to have someone like Tommy. First of all, I would have had to assume the role of a spaceman and do every riff much closer to Ace, which wasn't really my style, where Tommy knew that and embraced it. So in the end, I really think that it wasn't meant to be for me to remain in KISS, which was something I did miss greatly, but it would have kind of pooped on my era if I suddenly and then part 2 I became the spaceman. It just would have been weird, and I do think, even though everybody loved Ace and wanted to see Ace. That was his decision not to be in the band anymore. They didn't fire him, you know, and Tommy does an admirable job of keeping it going. And Eric Singer's done a great job as the cat man, even though at least I had 5 glorious years with him, you know, between Unplugged and the Live 3 and the Revenge album. I know Bob loved working with Eric, and I know that Bob, if Eric wasn't up to top level, there would have been a different drummer there. You remember that? We were looking at drummers. He was auditioning drummers because we knew that Eric Carr was sadly going to be too sick to perform, and then sadly, of course, he passed away during that period. But again, it was a weird transition time, but when I look back at it, it was all meant to be for a reason, you know, how it all planned out. So,
Bob, I want to ask you about the Destroyer record, one of the greatest records of all time, and it really took KISS to the next level. Here you are in 1976 or whatever, you've got this band, they've got some steam, but what was your mission when you started making Destroyer? Because it was next level all across the board.
Well, okay, so I went to see KISS play live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Somebody had called me to see if I was interested in producing the band, and so I went to see them live, and they played to 9,000 15-year-old boys. And there wasn't a girl in the audience. And then we met in New York to talk about what the possibilities were. And I said to them, you know, there was a famous Marlon Brando movie from the 50s called The Wild One. And it's a movie about 2 motorcycle gangs that come into this small town. One is led by Marlon Brando, and the other one's led by Lee Marvin. Marlon Brando's guys, I mean, they're all bad guys. They're all motorcycle gang guys. But Marlon Brando's team seemed to have a little bit more heart. And Marlon is the kind of guy that the girl in town, the pretty girl in town, decided she could fix. She said to herself, I love this guy, I'm gonna fix him. And whereas Lee Marvin was just pure evil and danger and, you know, repulsive basically to the audience. So I said to the guys, as far as women are concerned, right now you're Lee Marvin. And what we need to be is Marlon Brando. We want every woman in the world to fall in love with you and to think they can fix you. So we need to add a little bit of vulnerability and a lot more sort of candor. And we need to expose a little bit of our more sensitive side, etc., while still retaining the ballsy, you know, heavy rock bass of the band and everything. They liked that. They got it because they were, you know, they're all fans of media, and Gene in particular was a fan of movies and television and stuff, so they completely understood what it was that I was talking about. And that was the mission, that we went in to try to create something. So like, you know, when I sat at the piano figuring out, dum, dum, do you love me? Dum, dum, do you love me? I had this vision of Paul on his knees in front of the audience, you know, saying, do you love me? And then every girl in the audience rushing to the stage, saying, yeah, I love you, you know, and that was the impulsion behind the makeup of the record, yeah.
There's so many theatrical elements. There's theatrical elements on there that you've used with Alice and with Pink Floyd. You had it in the Revenge record. Is this something that was in your background, that theatrical, Broadway type, you know, bravado?
Yeah, I mean, I started off working in television when I was 8 years old, and then did theater in my teenage and stuff. And I actually thought I was going to be an actor. But I always loved music, and honestly, I would have taken any gig where I could make stuff. You know, I just wanted to make stuff. I wanted to make theater, I wanted to make music, I wanted to make movies. And I got hired by the great Jack Richardson, who was the producer of the Guess Who at the time, a band from your hometown. And at that moment, when he hired me, they had the #1 song in the world, American Woman, which was #1 on all the charts, and they were, for a moment, the biggest band in the world. So I got hired by the guy who produced that, and he took me under his wing, he kind of nurtured me. But I brought all of my sort of theatrical, underpinnings and things to the job. And I got Alice Cooper. They gave me Alice Cooper when Alice Cooper came in through the door, because that was just more in my bailiwick than it was in Jack's or anybody else's in the company. And lucky me, because the first record I ever produced was Love It to Death.
Wow.
Great question, great response. I know we have people lining up now to ask questions, so we'll go over to that side of the room. We have somebody with a microphone.
Jericho.
What is your name and where are you from?
My name's Eric, Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm a recovering Jerichoholic.
All right.
Thank you.
So several times Paul mentioned doing another KISS cruise. If that does come to pass, can we get you on it?
So I did the KISS cruise in 2015 with my main band, Fozzy. And when we were on that cruise, I realized I could do a wrestling cruise. And we've done 6 Chris Jericho Rock and Wrestling Razors now. So once again, here's the best part about KISS, and we all know this. Music is amazing, the guys are great, but the message always hit me. Follow your dreams, do great things, believe in yourself. And I thought I could do a fucking cruise. If KISS can do it, I can do it. So I would love to do another KISS cruise. I love the idea of this being the on-land KISS cruise. The only thing is, now that I have my own cruise, it would be hard to go back to like the deck number 10 when I'm used to being up top in the big boy suite. As a matter of fact, we had a cruise a few years ago. My cruise docked, and 6 hours later, the KISS cruise people came on, and the KISS was leaving that. And I was in the Haven, is what it's called, and I was in the room, the suite that was going to be Gene's suite. I had the biggest party ever, man. This place was trash. I was like,
I was
how
there.
are they gonna, you were there?
I was there.
How are they
I was
gonna clean this up? Gene's gonna be here in 6 hours. It's gonna flip. So I wrote him a note. I said, sorry, dude. I apologize. I hope they're able to clean this up for you. But yeah, the KISS cruise, once again, another pioneering idea that just brought the whole community of fans and friends together. And KISS is the fucking best. Put that on a t-shirt.
Those rock and wrestling cruises are some of my favorite moments I've ever had. Wrestling fans, like KISS fans, are so loyal. And you say anything on that cruise that could be a catchphrase, and it will just turn into a chant. Those rock and wrestling cruises. If you've never done them, I highly recommend them. There's just such a great positive energy out there. Great question, and thank you for that. I'm gonna go over here. Do we have somebody over here on this side of the stage?
Yes, sir.
What is your name and where are you from?
My name is Mike. I am from Belleville, Illinois.
All right, Mike, what is your question?
First, I want to thank Bruce for being such a good person and such a great musician. I've met you several times.
Thank you. Amen.
Also, your better half, Lisa, she's just really a great soul. My question is there a solo that you are most proud of in the band?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked sometimes your favorite songs, favorite album, and in this case, let's take a look at the solos. I think it's great for me to be connected to a few, okay, so I can't give like a one answer. Certainly, I think Tears Are Falling became something real important to a lot of people, and, I was very proud of what I was able to put together with that, and I even had some assist from Paul with the harmony intro part. Interesting song too, it's really such a fun one to play. And then if you move ahead a bit, there's obviously a lot of speedy stuff, but on the Shade to do an acoustic solo that was kind of almost romantic, you know what I mean? And I came up with it. And a quick story about that, Paul. First I thought I'd play a lead guitar, not an acoustic, and Paul was like, no, I really hear this on acoustic, kind of like in a Led Zeppelin song. He runs out the Tower Records to get it to me, and I was already like 75% done by the time he came back with his Guild guitar, figuring out the solo. And then, moving forward, stuff like Unholy, I'm so proud of. These like wildly, manic, powerful kind of playing from my balls, as they used to push me. You gotta play with your cojones, Bruce. Silly stuff like that. But all of them, I mean, the key, and I've really been enjoying like listening to the Dress to Kill live stuff, you know, and listening to Ace in '75, how it's always the guitar player's role to really make the song, like make a song within the song, you know, and make something memorable. And my era was a little more the flashy guitar playing, but I have to say, anytime I can give it melody and its own kind of like emotion to it that will connect with the fans, then I won, and then the song becomes better. That's the goal.
Great question, thank you. We'll go on this side of the stage.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Doyle Roush. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, the college football capital of the country right now.
And a great Funny Bone Comedy Club. What is your question?
Bruce, a lot of us were down in Nashville at Preachers Fest a couple years ago, and it was great to see you play with Vinny and Ace, two people who have stylistic differences, but also unique personalities. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like to be with both those guys at the same time?
Great question.
It was really very, very surreal, the whole thing. The oddest thing, it started off with, of course, a great plan that there would actually be a core band, real drums, and a bass player who could sing. And wait, what, did I miss something? Oh, you were there?
I want to see how you handled it.
Yeah, okay, all right. Setting it up.
Yes, I was there. I was there.
Started out with a plan. Yes, go
Look,
ahead.
my wife's off stage. She's going to know I'm going to tell her. Fair enough. Okay, I'll go.
He's the nicest guy. I'll put an exclamation point on it when he's done.
So I run into Vinny on the way there, like before. I mean, it was a little, maybe 2 hours before, and I had questions from like, which part are you going to take on the ending of this song? You know, what are you going to do? And he's like, whatever you want to do. I'm like, well, pick a part. You know what I mean? No, I'm here for you. I mean, the whole conversation was like, what? You know, and he was very kind and sweet about it. I was kind of like, this isn't helping. Then, of course, I hear, there is no drummer, okay? We're playing the tracks. Who's going to start the tracks? What is that? We're not in ears with a click and stuff. And then I get the call from Ace Frehley. I'm not doing it. I go, let's have a conversation. It kind of was like iffy. Well, and it's really odd. I asked my wife to pull it up because she actually filmed it when Ace's conversation on my phone, okay, and I'm listening to it, and she has it, so I'm hearing the audio, and it's pretty precious. It's really, I should transcribe it sometime. Ace was wonderful, and we became real kumbaya about it, because I kept going like, for the fans, we got to do this, because Ace was dead against not having a drummer. He's never played without a drummer, and he was saying that, you know, like, I don't, you know, what the fuck, why is he a drummer, you know, what do you, I'm like, I know the tracks, Ace, I have heard them, and I know the guy who created them will be there, who started. Of course, when I went out first for War Machine, and the guy, I didn't even know where he was when he started it. And War Machine has the repeating riff. Until I figured out where I was, that took 3 minutes, you know. And then the optics of Vinny to be up on the tank, which I didn't really know was going to happen. It was like, to me, it was like Star Trek. Like he was like the Borg, you know, like the woman in the Borg or something. It was very creepy. But you know, out of respect to Vinny and his great songwriting and the importance of history when he was there, I wore like an Ankh scarf, you know what I mean?
Oh.
Which he really loved that. And then Ace comes out, and we're all playing together. And that was kind of really special, even though I think Ace got confused with the last song we were doing. You know, everybody was starting a different song. But we pulled it together, and very ironically, was at the very end of Deuce, you know, Ace told me, you play this, you just solo out at the ending, I don't need to play. But Ace's amp, you know, sometimes an amp can unplug itself, the speaker cable can come out if there's too much vibration, and he was really loud. So all of a sudden, where's Ace? I don't hear anything. And I'm looking at Vinny, and he's playing. I still don't hear anything. Meaning, I was the only one playing to the drums and bass. So I don't even know if Vinny had his volume on, you know what I mean? Although he was like playing, you know? So all I know is when I got off the stage, I was like, oh, thank God that's over. What else could I say, you know? I'm not sad I did it. I don't want to ever repeat that with you know, in a situation like that. Because, look, Vinny is eccentric. I got a quote once that he's the Howard Hughes of KISS, you know, even though he's been getting out there a little more on occasions. But, you know, unfortunately, the bad side was things didn't actually go as planned, but the good side was it actually happened. You had 3 guitar players of KISS performing, as much as it was a bit. What was your take on it?
It was hilarious because So we were there too, right? And the venue was closed. Bob, you couldn't get in there. There was like locked doors, and everyone's waiting outside to get in, right? Was anybody in Nashville? Okay, so everyone's waiting outside the venue, and the doors are closed. They open the door, and here's Vinny on top of the tank.
He just starts.
Soloing.
Just starts.
Now, when I say soloing, this is not Eruption, a minute and a half. This is freaking 20 minutes
Yes.
of soloing.
As people are
As
walking
people
in.
are walking in, but it never ended. It just kept going and going and going. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then like you said, that you guys came on and the drums were kind of at a sync at a certain point. Ace started Cold Gin and you guys were playing Deuce, and it was, I know you guys, and it was so cool to see, but I will never forget Vinnie Vincent on top of a fucking tank, soloing for 20 minutes, where you first come in, you're like, yeah! And then you're like, he's still going!
And then there's another
Get in!
there's another element to it, which is they didn't want people recording, and everyone's first instinct when they walked in was to go, the fuck? And we started filming it because it was so odd. So,
Bob, when you guys did Revenge and Vinny was involved with the songwriting, did you ever have any interactions with him at all, or were the songs already done by the time you were recording with him?
No, I saw Vinny a couple of times, but I wasn't in the room when he was writing. I was in the room with Gina Paul for most of the songs, but not with Vinny. Yeah. Anyway, Chris. So first of all, I have to say I'm a fan of the band. Second of all, I have to say kayfabe. And third of all, I have to say the reason I said that is because when I was a teenager, I picked corn on Whipper Billy Watson's farm. That's all for Chris.
That's an old school wrestler. So before Bob made some of the greatest albums of all time, he picked corn at a wrestler's farm. There you go.
really? Who's next up? Which side of the stage do we go, right? How about we start over here, on this side of the stage? What is your name? Where are you from?
My name is Matteo from Germany.
Hi, Mateo.
I have a question for Bruce. I saw Bonfire this year, and they always have Sword and Stone on the set list, which Paul co-wrote. I think it's very unfortunate it didn't end up on Crazy Nights Records. And my question is, if there's any shelf material you would have loved to see on any of your KISS era albums.
And any material that you would have liked to have seen that didn't make it on the albums that you'd like to have seen? For Crazy Nights specifically?
For any
of the work that you did, any material that you would have liked to see playing on an album that you...
Bob, do you remember Do You Want to Touch Me Now? It was a completely recorded track, tight as can be. I didn't do the solos because we didn't have a vocal on it yet. So this is like one other song that should have been on Revenge, could have been. I remember you and Paul weren't real happy with the melody for the chorus or something. You weren't really convinced. It was co-written with Snake Sabo, actually, from Skid Row. And I have a perfect version of it, just the backing of the track, and it sounds amazing. So I'm really sorry that never happened. But I think really the most featured song of my career that never got released was Sword and Stone.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So maybe we'll hear it tonight,
Ooh! Wow!
Bruce, why wasn't that song used?
Producers have opinions. Bob understands that being a producer. But somehow Nevison, who they were putting a lot of trust in, because he delivered such hits with Hard and Nausea, he just didn't hear it. You know what I mean? And yet other people covered it, meanwhile, and then I know a lot of the KISS fans that collect and all, they know about it and they've heard it, but boy, I could have made a little bit more money, Bob, if that was on that record, right?
It's interesting, Bruce, because Paul Dean from Loverboy released that song, maybe in the States, but in Canada, it was actually a pretty big hit on the radio, Sword and Stone.
Really? And co-written with Desmond, Desmond
Yeah.
Stroud is such a brilliant writer, and Desmond did place a few places, but it didn't, I think it would have generated more action if it was with KISS, on Crazy Nights.
It's a great song.
We got a little over 10 minutes left, so I want to try to get as many of your questions in as possible. So go back over here on this side of the stage. What is your name? Where are you from?
My name is Keenan. I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan. And my favorite member of KISS is Eric Carr. And so I was just hoping that Bruce and Bob, since you both worked with him, could share your thoughts on Eric and his contributions to KISS, and if there are any funny stories maybe the fans haven't heard. Thanks.
Well, I got to tell you, the very first time I met Eric, I would barely call it a meeting, but my brother Bob took me up to one of the studios in Manhattan. I'm not sure which one, maybe Right Track or something. And they were working on Creatures of the Night, and they were mixing Love It Loud. And there was Eric Carr. You know, he's not a tall guy, you know, but the hair is huge. And he's just lounging on one of the couches. All studios have like beautiful lounges, you know. And, you know, I said hi, but I didn't really know him. And it was really weird. They were working on the fade to Love It Loud, you know, how it goes away and it comes back and stuff like that. And it was really a trip. I really loved what I was hearing. But really, I got to know Eric very well on the Animalized tour, because now I'm really the new guy, technically temporarily, which became actually permanent until '96. But it was funny, he was already jaded by the fame and what it was to be in KISS with all the ups and downs. I know Bob knows, he didn't like doing the Elder. He said, this is a big mistake, you know, stuff like that. But certainly Animalized, what a great drum sound, right? And then Creatures even had a bigger one anyway previously. But I remember hanging out with Eric, and Eric would be, you know, I was having like the time of my life. I'm playing lead guitar with KISS. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. And Eric was like, you know, he was complaining about something. At one point, I just said like, stop, please. Anybody would give their left nut to be in the band. Stop it, please. We became very close. I don't want you to think that he was a negative guy. He was very, very lovely, and he loved the fans. He was the guy who would answer every, you know, they used to write back then, it wasn't emails, and he would write them back, and he'd go down to the lobby and meet the fans. It didn't matter if it was, you know, 5 degrees out and we're in Sweden, and he would head out and make sure he could meet the fans and sign autographs. And he was super creative, can sing great, write great songs. He was a tremendous drummer, very powerful. He was very funny. The banter between Eric Carr and Paul was always very precious. And I think some of that was just them burning off their nervous energy, kind of. They would one-up each other with silly things. And you know, Gene would be like in the bathroom taking a number 2, and they're throwing toilet paper over the thing, you know, pranking. He'd eat chocolate bars for breakfast, some crazy things like that.
Well,
but he was really a special guy, so creative. It was very sad, of course, that he wasn't well enough to work with Bob on Revenge, but I'm glad, as sad as it was, but we did it for the right reasons. We were able to have him appear on the record. And he sang great backgrounds for God Gave. You know, I have one track of that, one sample where, you know, the quiet part, you really hear his voice. He had such a beautiful voice. So I loved doing Rockology with him. That was a lot of fun, his solo record, which is very popular on streaming.
Bruce,
yeah.
I didn't realize, I made a mistake that I thought we were going to the top of the hour. This is actually, they're about to get started on the Doc McGee Q&A right now.
Okay.
So I do want to say, talking about Eric and yourself, it really means a lot to us as KISS fans, how approachable and kind you have been to us over the years.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And thank you guys for coming out for this segment. I also want to make a note. Chris Jericho is one of the best interviewers I've ever seen. His podcast right now has a unicorn that has not done an interview in forever. He's got Jakey Lee right now on his podcast, on Talk is Jericho. I've done his podcast twice, and I've walked out of there as someone who's done hundreds of interviews all over the world. I've walked out of there going, that was a wonderful conversation. And you're a genuinely curious person, which makes your podcast so great. Bob Ezrin, thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen.
Such a pleasure, Bob. Thank you so much.
And another round of applause for the great Chris Jericho.
Thank you, guys.
Cannot go wrong with Canadians. And one more time, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bruce Kulick.
I'll see you at 7:30 tonight, okay? Right here. Okay?
And I'm going to do stand-up comedy at 12:30 in Oxford.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you, and get ready for Doc McGee, everybody.